How's it going? So today we are going to begin our discussions of trauma healing. I'm going to be linking this to occult practices and some other psychology topics and techniques that are used in the world of trauma in general. So please use your discernment when you're doing any of this work. None of this is a replacement, okay, for any kind of professional help. If you need to go and talk to a therapist or get help, do it. All right. Do not be afraid to seek out a professional. Okay. I had to do this. I worked with a very good trauma therapist out here in the state that I live, and some of the stuff that she helped me work through was absolutely phenomenal. So, and then also, that combined with some of the other things that I'm going to be teaching you inside of here, are exactly how I overcame claustrophobia, certain types of anxiety, OCD, and some other things. All right. And so with that, let's get going. Okay. And as always, if you guys ever have any questions or want extra resources, please reach out. Okay. So we are going to begin looking at rewriting the inner trauma map of ourselves. And so this presentation, it bridges, this one specifically will bridge two different fields together, and then the next one will bridge everything into a third, right? Where I'll teach you guys just different techniques for nervous system reset and ways to get yourself out of that initial panic mode. Okay. All right. So these are things that not a lot of people speak of, and so these are going to be interwoven between psychology, esoteric practices, and modern behavioral science. Okay. These are converging on the same insight, and memory, just so you know, is not fixed. Okay, and we're going to discuss that and what a trauma memory actually is as we get moving in here. So to understand how we rewrite this inner map, we first need to understand how the map was actually drawn, right? So trauma isn't stored as a story. It's stored as a sensation, an image, emotional charge, and even a body memory, right? Your reaction to whatever the event is. This is why decades of talking about something can leave the wound still intact, right? And then a single vivid visualization, it can actually shift the whole thing, right? Occultists have known this for millennia. NLP practitioners, they've rediscovered this in the 1970s, and so neuroscience is actually now catching up through memory reconsolidation research and some other things, which we will touch on in the next presentation. So let's start to figure out how trauma organizes itself in the psyche through the archetypes that we discussed before and Carl Jung. So what is a memory as it relates to trauma? To understand trauma work and why certain techniques like reconsolidation and even anchor objects, which again we'll talk about in the next presentation. I had to split this presentation in half, everyone. It was like 60 slides or something. It was just absolutely crazy. So I split this one in half. All right, and so just know that some of the topics in here will be woven into the next one as well. Such as anchor objects. Okay. You have to first understand, though, what a memory is at the biological, psychological, and phenomenological levels. Trauma memories are not stored the same as just your standard, ordinary, happy memories and other memories that you have in your day-to-day life. Okay, this difference is the entire foundation of why trauma is so difficult to resolve through conventional means. Okay, so this is the classical model. This one is incorrect, and it's been overturned by decades of neuroscience research. Okay, it's this whole model is just completely wrong. Traditionally, they would say that an event would happen, the brain records it, later the recording is played back, and then the recording remains stable over time. This is not true. A memory is not a recording. Okay, it is a reconstruction performed fresh each time you remember it. Okay, this is a trauma memory. Each act of remembering rebuilds the memory from distributed neural fragments, okay, that are stored throughout the brain. The memory is temporarily unstable during retrieval, and then whatever information is present during retrieval can be incorporated into that reconsolidated memory. Okay, every remembering slightly alters the memory. Okay, so the original memory, it ceases to exist after the first recall. You only actually ever have the last reconstruction. Okay, and so this is what's known as memory reconsolidation, and it was decisively demonstrated in Karim Nadir's 2000 experiments, and it's been replicated hundreds and hundreds of times since. Okay, and so to put this in a little bit more, simpler terms, what is a memory? A trauma memory. Okay, you ever played the game of telephone? All right. In school, you whisper in another child's ear, and that child is supposed to whisper the same thing. And by the time you get to the end, that phrase or word is so blown out of proportion or mangled that it doesn't even represent the original event or word or the original word, right? So that right there is effectively what trauma memory recall does. Every time that thing comes up, anybody that has been through any sort of addiction counseling, therapy, anything like that, you understand the term rolling that ball of crap in your head, right? You just, every time you think about something, the more you think about it, the more it festers. You just roll it around more and more and more and more and more, adding more crap, almost like a dung beetle, right? Just rolling it through the mud, picking up more crap. Okay, so a single memory, it's not actually one thing, okay? It is a bundle of separately stored components that get reassembled during recall. These are sensory fragments. These are visual images, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations. Emotional charge, it's the feeling, the tone attached to the event. Somatic patterns. Okay, these are the body's response. So the tension, the breath, the posture. The autobiographical narrative. This is the story that you tell about what happened. Okay, contextual information, the time, the place, who was there, meaning or interpretation of that event. So what the event says about you, others, and reality. Okay, predictive learning, what the event taught you to expect. And so these are stored in different brain regions, and they're reassembled on demand. Okay, ordinary memories, they reassemble smoothly. Trauma memories do not. They're very chaotic, and when they come together, they are also very chaotic. So what makes this different? aside from what we've just talked about, when an event overwhelms the nervous system's capacity to process it, enter chaos, right? The memory does not consolidate normally. Instead, the components fail to integrate. The sensory fragments, the emotional charge, and the body sensations get stored separately from the autobiographical narrative. This is why trauma survivors often had vivid body memories or emotional flashbacks without a clear story, or a clear story without corresponding feelings. Okay? The memory is not time-stamped. Ordinary memories, they actually carry a this happened in the past tag. Okay? Trauma memories do not. This is why flashbacks feel like the event is happening right now. Absolutely. Because it is happening right now. The past tense marker, it never got applied. And so effectively what we're going to do is we're going to go through how to apply this, right? And so the hippocampus goes offline during overwhelming events, stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. They suppress the hippocampus. Okay, this is the region of the brain that organizes memory into coherent narrative and context. Meanwhile, the amygdala, which handles emotional intensity, it becomes hyperactive. Okay, this results in intense emotional sensory encoding without a narrative structure. The memory's fragmented, right? It just, instead of I was in the car, it was raining, the accident happened at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, the memory actually then, it consists of only the smell of gasoline, a sound, a body freeze, a color, a feeling of terror. The fragments are all real. They just aren't assembled into a complete picture. Okay. The triggers, they activate the fragments, not the memory. All right. And so this is it could be a smell, a voice, a tone. It could be certain angle of light. That activated the trauma. It could be even specific words, right? Or happy memories or other things. It can be all kinds of things that trigger these, right? Effectively, though, they activate the trauma network without a conscious recognition. And so the person suddenly feels terror, rage, or numbness with no idea why. The fragment has been triggered without the story. The predictive learning becomes generalized, and so the brain overgeneralizes lessons from trauma. A man hurt me becomes men are dangerous, to from that car crash to cars are unsafe. I was betrayed becomes this, trust from anyone is impossible. Okay. Or being able to trust others is impossible. So the predictive layer becomes a distorted lens of all future experience. So the three types of trauma memory, okay, you've got explicit or declarative. This is the conscious narrative. What you can tell someone in words, often incomplete or missing in trauma. Implicit or emotional memory. This is the feeling tone, okay? The emotional charge, the atmosphere of the event, often intact and hyperactive in trauma. The third one is procedural or somatic, okay? This is the body's stored patterns. How it braces, freezes, collapses. This is where trauma lives most persistently. This is why body-based approaches such as somatic experiencing, anchor objects, and breathwork reach material that talk therapy actually cannot. And so at the beginning of this video, I did say that if you this isn't a replacement, and it's absolutely not. And so I 100% would recommend talk therapy along with, regression therapy, along with somatic, therapy and all of the other things, right? Just why not create yourself the best possible environment for healing, right? If you truly, truly want to heal, why not do that? Why not give yourself all of the tools in your tool belt to fix, right? So there are two trauma therapists that I want to talk about here really quick. Peter Levine, he developed the somatic. He's the developer of somatic experiencing. Okay, he articulated it clearly. He said trauma is not the event. Trauma is the nervous system. The event is over. What remains is the incomplete response. The fight, flight, or freeze that never got to finish. The nervous system is still holding the survival response, waiting to complete it. The memory is not really about the past at all, right? It's actually a present tense psychological state that keeps activating, right? And so we're not remembering a memory. We're reliving that memory in present tense, and not even the original event or original memory. It's one that's been, distorted and twisted and recombined and maybe even put together backwards. Like, who knows, right? The other therapist that I want to talk about is Bessel and Kolk. And so in the Body Keeps Score, he actually showed through brain imaging, okay, that when trauma was recalled by survivors, the Broca's area, which is actually the speech production, it shuts down. Okay, so this right here is proof of that freeze, right? You can't speak. You're just terrified. You're in speechless terror. Okay, the right hemisphere, the emotional sensory, it activates intensely. The left hemisphere, the linear verbal, it goes completely quiet. The prefrontal cortex, right? This is the executive function that allows you to think properly. It's suppressed. The body shows the same stress response as the original event when they are recalling, okay? The person is not remembering the trauma, they're reliving it neurologically. The memory is not a record of the past. It is a present event being triggered by cues, effectively. And so why does this matter? Okay, if a memory were a video recording, trauma would be permanent. You cannot edit a recording of the past because memory is a reconstruction. And reconsolidation makes memories temporarily rewritable each time, actually, believe it or not, they're recalled. So trauma can be genuinely transformed, my friends. There is a light at the end of this tunnel, okay? This is the entire basis for things like occult visualization practices that were deliberately activating the memory network and introducing new symbolic content during the reconstruction window. NLP submodality shifting is another one. Altering the sensory qualities during retrieval. The reassembled memory, it carries less charge, okay? Timeline reimprinting. So you can introducing the adult self, right? Resources or protections into the memory during reconsolidation. I've actually rewritten the outcome of many of my memories, like the one where I was stuck in the Mercedes as a child. For the folks that I don't know or haven't met me out at expos or markets. My claustrophobia came from an event when I was a child that happened with my dream car. It was an accident, right? And it was nobody's fault at all. But as a child, you don't know these things. And so I'll discuss that a little bit in my story. In the channel introduction story and stuff. But yeah, just know that you can absolutely rewrite your memory in your trauma memories, right? So general memories not so much, but your trauma memories that are reconstructed in this manner, you absolutely can. Okay. Anchor objects is another one. These provide the nervous system with a present tense signal of safety. Okay, that actually it can compete with the trauma's present tense signal of threat over time, right? You have to use it, you have to practice with it, and you have to keep going. And so, this is one of my favorite techniques, anchor objects, which I'll go into how I use that as well for different situations like flying and going into crowded malls during Christmas and other things. Okay, as we move forward, but EDMR or EMDR. Using bilateral stimulation during memory activation to enable the reprocessing. And then somatic, right? Somatic experiencing, allowing the incomplete survival response to finally finish. These, all these techniques, they actually exploit the same underlying mechanism, that memory is a living process, okay? It can be redirected. Okay, so right here, for the purpose of our work, I've left a working definition on the screen here. So, a memory is a distributed neural pattern, sensory, emotional, somatic, narrative, and predictive that reassembles each time it's activated. And which becomes temporarily rewritable during that activation. A traumatic memory is one which the components failed to integrate, the timestamp failed to apply, and the survival response failed to complete. So that memory continues to function as a present tense physiological state rather than a past tense narrative. All right, so a quick refresher on archetypes. We're going to hop right in here to what is a trauma archetype, all right? Or what the trauma archetypes are. So, though I covered this in a recent video, Carl Jung proposed archetypes as psychic organs, basically. Inherited templates that shape how humans experience reality. So the mother, the shadow, the trickster, the wounded child, when trauma occurs, the personal experience gets bound to an archetypal form. That's why a specific childhood incident can feel mythic, cosmic, or even larger than life. All right, the archetype amplifies the personal experience. All right. Core archetypes. So these are the recurring figures found in trauma work across traditions. The internal family systems, Jungian analysis, and Peter Walker's complete PTSD model, the shamanic practices, etc. And so each represents a strategy the psyche developed to survive an intolerable experience. So none of these are pathological in origin. They're all adaptive, okay? And so we're going to take a look at each of these in turn. So the wounded child is the part of the psyche that stopped developing at the moment of trauma, okay? It carries the original grief, terror, or shame in an undiluted form. In visualization work, this figure often appears literally a child of a specific age in a specific setting. The adult self's task is not to rescue, but to witness and integrate. The abandoned one. So this archetype forms when a caregiver was physically or emotionally absent. It differs from the wounded child in that the wound is absence itself rather than active harm. Okay? In imagery work, the abandoned one rarely appears injured. Instead, its environment is empty. This right here was the foundation of all of my doctoral studies. Okay, all of my work was focused on John Balby and Mary Ainsworth, and their framework for for the caregiver, and that working relationship between the secure and insecure, the caregiver, and the secure and insecure relationships that can form in between them. And so that was effectively the core of my adult formal university research and other things before becoming a research fellow. And so yeah, I love psychology. So all right, the betrayed. I love psychology, but I also love chemistry and science and physics and other things. So whatever. All right, so the betrayed. The betrayed archetype is distinct from the wounded child because it holds an epistemological wound, right? A shattered understanding of reality when someone you trusted causes harm. Okay, the psyche must reorganize its map of the world. And so this archetype guards against re-injury by refusing intimacy. All right, scapegoat. I've heard a lot of people say that they are the black sheep of the family, the scapegoat of the family, and all of the other things. And I can tell you, depending on the family dynamic, you're probably a lot of these or multiples of these, not just one. Okay. There's times when the family dynamics will shift, and you may be the scapegoat at one point, your sibling or a neighbor or your mother or father's significant other could be the scapegoat at that time. It all depends, right, on the situation and the time. So the scapegoat, it carries the shadow of the family or group. Okay, children of dysfunctional systems, they often absorb the disowned material of their caregivers. Okay. In visualization, this figure often appears bearing marks, soot, wounds, brands that don't actually belong. Okay, and so the work is de-identification, right? Returning what was never theirs. So I probably should actually touch on that for all of the archetypes. So absolutely, you can shift from one to the other, back to the other, back to another one, and across. Like these are aspects of your personality and of you. Okay, so just know that if you were or are one of these, you can change it, and we'll talk about how as we go forward here. But just know that these aren't static. Okay. The lost self. Sometimes the wound isn't a scream, but silence. Okay. The lost self is the version of the person that was never allowed to emerge. The artist in the accountant, the wild one in the compliant one, right? The questioner and the believer. In recovering this archetype, often it requires the deepest work. And so for me, this was allowing myself to share. This was allowing myself to go up on stage and share my experience. It's what has allowed me to come here and share with you as well. And so again, these are very powerful as you work through them. I mean, the throat chakra is one that a lot of people in this world have been silenced. And I'm not going to dive into the why, because my personal belief is probably different than your personal belief. But just know that a lot of people in this world, they don't have a voice. And so opening that throat chakra, healing that throat chakra, and allowing yourself to do these kinds of things. You are an amazing individual, and you can do all kinds of things if you just put your mind to it and just you allow yourself to be open. And so kind of digressed there, but just know that that each of these, there are aspects of them that tie into your everyday life, right? So right here, the protector and the guardian. This is crucial. So in IFS and depth work, the protector is often mistaken for the problem. It actually isn't. It's the part that kept the wounded child alive. Okay, any healing work that tries to bypass the protector, it will fail. Okay, it must be met, acknowledged, and given a new role, not eliminated. And so, this one right here, there's definitely been times when events have happened when I've shifted from that child to the hero or the critic, the protector, very, very fast, and just trying to keep everybody safe, just based on childhood experience. Maybe it was appropriate at the time, maybe it wasn't, but either way, everybody remained safe, right? So, yeah. All right. Inner critic and the persecutor. So the inner critic is often the internalization of a critical or abusive figure. It attacks first so that external criticism cannot land as painfully. All right. In visualization work, this figure often appears as a specific person from the past, a parent, a teacher, a bully. The work is always to recognize it as part of the self, though, not the actual person. Okay. Once you recognize it as yourself, you can start asking yourself questions that just kill the whole thing, right? Like, why are you saying this about yourself? Do you really think this about yourself? If so, then why did you keep doing this, right? If you think you are that horrible at whatever it is that you are doing or going to do, why would you keep going forward and keep doing it? Because you want to get better? Okay, so then why are you beating yourself? And so you can just go down these rabbit holes, these loops, right? And pull yourself back out of these things. And so there are times, though, that just know there are situations, there are events that happen in life that maybe recognizing that it's a part of you isn't enough. And maybe you need to realize that there is a need for, disassociating yourself from that internalization. Okay. And again, we can discuss that later, but right now, just know that I see signs, I see keychains, I see shirts, I see, posts on Facebook. I see all kinds of things all over the place that say, you are worth it. You are enough. You are loved. Just know that all of these are true. Repeat these in your head if you have to, or try and internalize them the best you can. But our goal here is to rewrite this voice. Okay. Frozen one represents the dissociative response. And so previously I talked about disassociating. I did not mean just to completely, not respond. What I mean is dissociate, rewrite, and then come back and integrate, right? And so from here, this one, the frozen one, it represents the dissociative response when neither fighting nor fleeing was possible, right? This is the archetype that holds trauma at the body level rather than an emotional level. So its recovery is slower. It definitely requires somatic work alongside with imagery, and so this is the body's freeze response effectively. And now that we know the characteristics, how do we work with all of these? I've touched on these briefly throughout the video, but let's take a look at occult visualization. Okay, why occultist techniques? So occultists have been doing what modern therapists call imagery rescripting for thousands of years. Okay, They just call it invocation or pathworking or theurgy. All right, even religion, right? Religion. When you visualize, Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or the others as you're praying, right? That's what you're doing. You're rescripting imagery inside your mind, right? And so the techniques are not mystical superstition; they are cognitive technology that has been refined by generations of practitioners. It's used for engaging in deep symbolic content safely. All right. Each of the techniques on the screen here, they offer a different tool for trauma work, and we'll walk through them quickly and identify how each can be adapted for archetypal integration. Okay, so out of all of these, I'm going to say scrying, especially if you have problems with visualization already. Is going to take you some time to build up. Okay, I will tell you some, or I will teach you some techniques to start building up on visualization in a later video. But just know that right there, scrying, it may take you a little bit. Okay, all right. So pathworking. Pathworking is the most direct technique for trauma work. So you enter a controlled trance, you travel through symbolic terrain, you meet the archetype, exchange gnosis or dialogue, and then you return. Okay, the structure itself is protective. The practitioner always knows how they entered and how they'll leave. Okay, this is critical for trauma safe work. There we go. Sigil work. So Osman's spares sigil method is neurologically elegant, actually. It takes a conscious intention, it compresses it into a symbolic symbol or an image, right? And it plants it in the unconscious below the level of critical filtering. And so for trauma work, these sigils can actually represent the desired new state rather than the wound itself. The unconscious then organizes around that new symbol. So God form assumption. God form assumption allows the practitioner to become an archetype temporarily. Okay. So for trauma work, this is transformative because most trauma involves loss of agency. Okay, assuming a sovereign, powerful, or protective God form, it actually gives the nervous system a direct experience of alternate identity. Okay, it's weird how this happens, but it actually can trick the psyche to remember that it's possible, right, to become all powerful again. All right, astral temple construction. And so an astral temple is a practitioner's inner base of operations. In trauma work, it functions as the therapeutic container, a stable, protected inner space where archetypes can be met without overwhelming the system. Build it before you need it. And so the best example of this for folks who are new to any kind of work like this, the inner temple, if you watched any of the Doctor Strange movies in the Marvel universe, and the mirror realm, that's effectively or the shadow realm, that's effectively what you're doing in your mind, is you're building your own world that you can meet these folks in. And so build it how you want, right? Build the protections in and make sure that you are going to be safe. Keep your inner child, the mini you, safe. All right. Scrying. So scrying and active imagination differ from pathworking. All right. The practitioner watches rather than directs. This is essential for trauma material that hasn't yet consciously surfaced. Okay. The images arise and the practitioner witnesses. This is one of the safest techniques actually for beginners. Okay. but again, it does take time to figure that out and learn. And so you can use this if you, let's say that you're going throughout your day and something happens and you're just, your body just, yeah, you know, you get into this like tense, like, you know, I want to kill everybody mode, or I want to freak out, whatever. You can use this later to go back and try and figure out what actually triggered the event, or what memory, you know, it triggered it. And so these techniques, they access the material, right? The gray matter, the actual issues, right? They access the things that we generally have to trick in the world of trauma therapy and trauma healing. All right. So, but how do we actually change it? That is where memory reconsolidation comes in, and the use of things like NLP. Okay. So now that we have covered the trauma archetypes more in depth and begun to cover the practices inside of occult work, just know that a memory is not a source of truth. Okay, a trauma memory is not a source of truth. Again, if you've ever played the game of telephone, it's essentially what a trauma memory recall is. You are in control of your memories, your thoughts, and your actions. The archetype that you wear is not static. It changes, and you can change it at will. Join me next time for the use of these techniques, and with some very, very powerful psychological practice to help heal from trauma, and even use during shadow work. All right. Thank you, everyone. And here are some resources for you guys. If you want to check any of these out, I will add links in the descriptions of the videos. All right. Thank you.